Okay, so we've seen the fall of Nixon, and he's going to be pardoned by President Ford. Looking at the 1976 election. So 1976 election, Ford is going to run. He's a good guy. It's really pretty close if you look at it. Just about from 39 million one to 40 million eight. You know, about a million votes, a little over a million seven. 44% to 55%. But Carter, they're looking for an outsider. They're tired of the old guard. And so Ford will be voted. New president is a governor from Georgia. He'd been a peanut farmer at one time, his family. He had no part in the Vietnam War. He had no part in Watergate or the recession, so he's coming in as kind of this blank slate. He's got that good old smile there. He's a good old boy. So as president, he is trying to attack the energy crisis, stagflation, and the recession. So he comes in at a very difficult time, and nothing he does works. As a matter of fact, it only gets worse. Inflation goes up 6%. There's a new oil embargo in '79, which increases the gas lines and increases the price of gas. So Carter, dismal. As a matter of fact, what he suggests is just put on a sweater and turn down the heat. He gives a speech called the Malaise speech and said, if we just have a positive mental attitude, things are bound to get better. So he also is very similar to another president that we had as far as being a moral diplomacy type of guy. And you remember who that was? If you said Woodrow Wilson, you would have been correct here. So he is a human rights president, and he is a born-again Christian, and that is his soul. That is true. There is nothing fake about Jimmy Carter. Some people say he was a very bad president, but he certainly was a very, very good man and still is. He's our oldest living president. So one of the first things he's looking at, and we are still looking at today, is trying to have peace in the Middle East. And as we've talked about before, the Jewish state of Israel has been under constant attack by other Middle East nations. And Jimmy Carter is going to be able to bring the leader of Egypt, Anwar Sadat, together with the leader of Israel, Menachem Begin, who you see here, and Jimmy Carter in the middle, and he's able to bring them together. The conflict that they had been having, remember, goes back to its creation, and you can see how small Israel is here. We've talked about this before, how there was a series of wars with Lebanon, with Jordan, even with Egypt. The timeline by the 70s, you know, this is what the occupation looked like. So there's been this conflict over a period of over almost 40 years. So when he brings them together, well, about 30 years. When he brings them together, it's touch and go there for a while, but ultimately they sign a treaty of peace, and this is monumental. So they're going to call these, because they met at Camp David, the presidential retreat, they're going to call them these agreements the Camp David Accords. And all three of these men are actually going to win Nobel Peace Prizes for this effort. So Carter was seen to do the impossible. Israel agrees to leave the Sinai Peninsula, and Egypt just recognizes Israel's right to exist. Ultimately, Anwar Sadat will be assassinated, but this is still a great achievement. Another thing he's going to do, and remember we talked about the building of the Panama Canal and how Theodore Roosevelt fomented a revolution where Panama was created when they broke away from Colombia. Well, Carter believes that Panama should have control of the canal. And so he makes an agreement with Panama that they would take over control of the Panama Canal in the 21st century, in 1999. And this is showing him shaking hands with the leader of Panama, and ultimately that has happened. And now Panama does have control of the canal. The situation in the Middle East is tenuous at best. In Iran, there is a man there that, remember, we did this a little while back. A man named Mohammad Mossadegh had been in charge right after World War II, and our CIA instituted a coup that basically overthrew Mossadegh, and we put our guy in, a guy known as the Shah of Iran. So the spiritual leader of Iran was the Ayatollah Khomeini, and he is very much against the Shah. The Shah is a corrupt leader, and he is going to be the leader of an Islamic revolution in Iran. He hated the Shah, and the Shah had surrounded himself with secret police. The Shah had, what it was in the Ayatollah's opinion, robbed the Iranians and had tainted the religion. So when this overthrow happens, the Shah of Iran, who is suffering from cancer, is admitted into the United States by the president, Jimmy Carter. Remember, he's this moral guy. He's this missionary diplomacy guy, even though he was advised that the Iranians would react violently to this. So when they demand his return for trial, we refuse to extradite him. And that's when our American embassy is overrun by a group of Iranian students, and they take hostages. 52 American hostages are taken. They're paraded through the streets. On news reports, we actually, the evening news, Dateline at night, they would start out and their program would go bum, 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 bum. This is day number 53 of the Iranian hostage crisis. And they would move these prisoners from place to place, so we couldn't pinpoint exactly where they were. And Carter is frantically trying to get their release. We had some servicemen, we had diplomats, some older guys, younger guys as part of these, and it was a terrifying experience. So Carter is trying to negotiate. He threatened to put sanctions on them, economic sanctions. He even tried special forces to go in, and that was a disaster. The special forces, the helicopters crashed, they were killed. And so the economy's bad. Carter's seems unable to do anything about it. And after 444 days, the 52 hostages are going to finally be released. And that event is actually when Ronald Reagan takes office. On top of the events in Iran, the Soviet Union is going into Afghanistan. That's where we are now. And they start a fight to defeat an anti-communist uprising. Now, they're going to be about as effective as we are. They're going to fight for a very long time and end up withdrawing with not any concrete result on their part. But in response to this, Carter is going to cancel U.S. participation in the Olympics that the Soviet Union was. So this is, you're an athlete and you've been training and training and training, and now you are not going to be participating because of this foreign policy decision. This invasion signals an end to the détente that Nixon had negotiated with the USSR. And the United States is actually going to back the Afghan rebels against the USSR. There's a really good movie about this called Charlie Wilson's War. So here comes the end of Carter's presidency. He couldn't end stagflation. He couldn't free the U.S. hostages in Iran. We looked to be in a worse spot than we were as far as relations with Russia goes. And it is a dismal failure. And he's going to run for re-election, but his opponent is going to be a former actor from California, former governor of California, the great communicator, Ronald Reagan. You can see here this cartoon. There's been a mistake, Mr. Carter. When we asked you onto the show, we didn't mean as a judge. So as you can see in this election, it is 90.9% for Reagan as far as the electoral vote goes. And Jimmy Carter only takes 4 states, actually 5 states, Georgia, Minnesota, West Virginia, D.C., Rhode Island, and I'm sorry, it looks like Maryland, so that's 5 areas, including Washington, D.C. Hawaii, sorry, there we go, forgot about that. But it's a pretty significant defeat. You're looking at 8 million votes difference. So now we're going into 1980. We not in real good shape. You saw the end of the war in Vietnam, but new problems arising in the Middle East, social protest, counterculture, stagflation, bad recession. We've got just a lack of leadership, and now we're looking forward and looking to Ronald Reagan to lead the way.